Hey there, listener. Welcome to the Deep Share Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Rouse, and for the last couple of decades, I've slowly been opening my eyes to a very different world than the one I grew up hearing about. And the more conversations I have with interesting people, the more mystifying this world becomes. So without further ado, let's get deep.
We've got science to celebrate! Demons bliss out! After what, baby? Come on!
There is rebellion in the wind. It will crush.
Everything I've said is true. It's real.
Dinosaur fossils? God put those here to test our faith.
A damn lie. I saw them with my own eye.
Did IQs just drop sharply while I was away?
We did illusions, man! None of it is true!
I'm not insane!
This is mass madness, you maniacs! In God's name, you people are the real thing! We are the illusion!
Conversation flow. But continue what you were saying, how the survey kind of, put UFOs on the table. If it's not on the table for someone, it's kind of like, oh, this really, where were you going with that exactly?
Well, one of the things, and maybe we'll talk about this because, I'm probably going to rattle your cage at some point. Maybe you'll rattle mine. But What I really hope is that you'll kind of fill in some gaps for me because this is
vice versa.
Huge.
Vice versa, my friend.
So I sent you this survey and you were nice enough to fill it out and your answers are quite brilliant. And I'm not just saying that. I very, very deep. I'm like, man, I knew I was going to like this guy. I really want to talk to him.
Yeah. And I've been thinking about, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I've been thinking about having this conversation with you for quite a while because out of the plethora of amazing people that we all get to talk to in this community, what I really admire about you is your drive you just never let anybody off the hook about certain things. And I love that because I tend to be a little non-confrontational and I need a little bit of influence to really get my confidence about me and be like, hey, listen, I need to ask that again because you're still really not answering my question. You know what I mean? And I really admire that about you.
Well, I do know what you mean, but it's tricky, isn't it? Because
it is.
Yeah.
You don't want to cut off a conversation entirely. You don't want to alienate someone.
You don't want to be a prick.
But sometimes that's what's needed, right? I listened to a great conversation that you had. Well, it was starting to be a great conversation from this was back in 2014, I think, with that neurobiologist. What was her name? I can't remember off the top of my head, but she made a million excuses how nothing was working. And she just had to cut off the conversation. And you were drilling her. You were quoting her own book and she couldn't back up what she was claiming. It was just classic.
Well, there's so many jumping off points for that, because one of the things about that interview and what people have kind of said about Skeptiko, and there is some truth to it because it always happens for all of us. It's like, hey, the guys on my team, I'm going to kind of treat them one way. And the guys on the other team, I'm going to go for blood, So when she's on the other team like that, which she is, materialist scientist, really kind of clueless in my worldview, she needs to be confronted with, hey, this is a reality that you have to accept. You have to at least deal with.
Right.
Can we pause for 1 second?
Sure. No problem.
Sorry.
No worries. I'll take that time to introduce the show. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Deep Share. This morning, I have Alex Tsakiris from Skeptiko with me, and I've been waiting to have this conversation for a while. Alex is the author of Skeptiko, of course. He's also the author of Why Science is Wrong About Almost Everything. It's a pleasure to have him here because I've been following his work for so long, and he's interested in so many of the topics that I find fascinating, like near-death experience, extrasensory perceptions and experiences of that nature. But, Alex is interested in a lot of different topics, as am I. So we're probably going to get into a number of different things that don't necessarily relate to near-death experience. But as I've told him off the air, I think it's natural for us to talk about the very material conspiracy theories that we get into and find interesting. And it naturally moves us towards that more personal conversation about consciousness. So yeah, I hope you guys have a great time listening to this conversation with me and Alex. And Alex has returned, has managed to rally in the puppy.
I am so sorry, man.
Oh, no worries. No worries.
Okay. You have the ability to edit that back into.
You know what? I took the time to just give a little intro. And honestly, that's another thing I don't even normally do. I like barely give intros just because I'm caught up in the moment. So yeah, who's perfectly timed. So yeah, welcome to the Deep Share, Alex. I appreciate you being here, man.
Thank you, Andy. I think we're going to have a great conversation.
Likewise.
And a kind of silo-free conversation. That's what I was leading up to, in what we were talking about before. Because one of the things that the way I put it is, right, and you understood right away because you go, yep. And it's like we wind up in our silos where we're, just kind of talking to each other and everything makes sense and it's coherent. And then somebody comes in outside, and like, so one of my things is UFOs and ET, along with near-death experience, along with out-of-body experience, along with evil, and along with, all that stuff. So every time somebody gets settled, I'm the guy who's going, wait a minute, you're in your silo. What happens when you come out of your silo and look at this other stuff? You're nodding. So you have,
I appreciate that. Yes. I think, subconsciously you've probably influenced me in some way to take that approach confidently at times, because I kind of try to throw a wrench in the spokes. Well, I don't try to, but I have the wrenches and I have to throw them. I'm sure you can relate to that, because sometimes it's like, I strongly feel that everyone in this community has a piece of the puzzle to offer, but sometimes they don't even understand their own puzzle. I think a lot of us need each other to kind of shine the lights in different ways on each other's puzzle pieces to kind of see what that puzzle piece really means and where it really fits. People say demons and angels, but then again, you could say depression or confidence. It's a gradient of experience that the more we accept into the worldview, the more we can kind of see what's really going on. I try not to throw too much out. I want to keep as much in as possible and see where something might be more metaphor than dense physicality, perhaps, especially in this realm that we're talking about, near-death experience and all that. If that made any sense, Alex.
it makes total sense. And it kind of the good side and bad side of that is it kind of does bring exactly what we're talking about into focus. And in terms of the challenge there, because I don't necessarily agree with what you're saying. I always come to one way I put it is like a litmus test, like at every angle that you go down, angels, demons, depression, litmus test. Okay, what do you consider, this, whatever this is, whether it's pandemic, 9/11, ET, UFOs, within each one of those, I'd say is like the litmus test, whether it's Roswell or UFOs and nukes, whether is there really a virus, kind of thing. So I'm not quick to just brush past even the point that, well, everyone has a piece of the puzzle. No. Okay. But where I think you're also going with that, or where we can take it, that I so totally agree with, and this is where I need to grow, is like, you are a really cool dude. I can tell. No, I could tell. I'm reading these survey answers that you gave me, and I'm like, immediately, and this from kind of Deep Share, right? It's like, because I've heard you say this, that you have this cool community now, you've built this cool community of people like, bro, I get it. You get me, I get you. Now that's how I immediately feel with you, because, I'm asking you, well, science, and you go, it's a method. It's not a position statement. It's inextricably linked to scientific materialism. I'm like, bing, already. Everything is consciousness. You're right. That's what you wrote as an answer. The paradox somehow allows this experience. Brilliant. So I'm like, I'm all over this guy in terms of we're like bros. On the other hand, so to finish that thought, so I don't want to, like alienate you or piss you off because like you can be my friend, you know what I mean? But at the same time, if we're going to talk about the Bach saga, I'm going to go, man, that sounds like fucking bullshit to me.
Nice. Thank God. Finally, someone that at least comments, because it's either this is too weird, I don't even want to touch it, or wow, this is really interesting, and kind of just following along with what I'm saying about it. I would, yeah, that's a different thread altogether. But yeah, I am looking for debates about that because I don't like what I'm finding necessarily in some areas of that story. So I want to know what's going on there and why it fits so well in some places, But again, that's another thread altogether, but a great example that you brought up.
And it's a great thread to go down because like, we'll just go down it right now because your listeners know about it. We'll just do a 30-second flyby. Is I'd say that the reason why it resonates, the reason why it's true is because it's well crafted. It's kind of like Christianity. The reason why it fucking works so well as a social engineering mind control project is because a lot of it is really solid from a spiritual perspective. But from a historical perspective, it really kind of breaks down. And then from a mind control, how do I use this to kind of shepherd people into my little club? There's all these other things built in. So the fact that it's brilliant just for millions and millions of people, it still is something they can't get over. They're like, no, but I had this brilliant spiritual experience through my practice of Christianity. I'm like, of course you did. Or like if you say, the Bach saga, it really resonates. And isn't this true and interesting? And what about the connection to language and sound? Like, yeah. The guy's not an idiot who put it together, but that doesn't mean it's real either.
Interesting. Yeah, well, I really appreciate that. And I think that maybe down the line somewhere, if I were to do a proper debate form with like notes and everything, maybe you'd like to be a part of it. I don't know. I mean, it's a rabbit hole to go down even just to understand enough to debate it, of course. But yeah, I don't know. I'm glad that you have that perspective because often I don't find that, so it helps. But yeah, the language stuff in itself, I think where it resonates for me is how it kind of, so let me put it this way. I do think something about it feels like it's the other end of the stick. Like you have this constant from a long time ago feud between this more natural way and this more artificial way, I guess you could call it, but they're both really the same people. It's almost like a family feud. And it's like, if the Bach saga has any truth to it, it doesn't mean that it's the way we should all be going back to by any means, but it would be the more naturalistic way. Like it's the heathen, the pagan, the worship of nature, more than move on from that, expand outward, build machines, become the new thing. It's a very old versus new kind of mentality that I constantly see out there. But then again, that also feels like Hegelian dialectic as well. I don't know. It's a big topic to get into for sure.
Right. I mean, it kind of cuts both ways there. It's like the part you landed on the end is kind of more what I was saying, right, Andy? It's like, yeah, it's picking up some themes, some metaphors, some archetypes that do resonate with us and have some deeper truth. But then but what does that mean in terms of inquiry to perpetuate doubt? So Skeptiko, that's my ethos. I didn't realize it even at the time that I named the show, but inquiry to perpetuate doubt. I want to be doubtful because that to me is a spiritual process. When I settle on something, when I know something,
It's over.
I've lost. Exactly. It's over. I've lost it. I've lost it when I'm always reaching. And for me, that's kind of a doubt, So my point would be, rather than to find the resonance with the Bach saga, but yeah, there has to be some, otherwise I'm not drawn in.
Right,
But
right.
once I find the resonance, okay, how can I tear this apart?
Right.
And is there any one thing? Because all it takes is one thing, that is an irrecoverable kind of falsehood, and then you go, oh, okay.
Well, I would just, to that, I would say the problem is a lot of the holes you could possibly find in something like the Bach saga would then have to be looked at with a keen eye too, because it's coming from, say, a Catholic-run society. And we know that they overran and destroyed so much of the world and strangleholded everyone into their belief structure at one point, Scandinavia included, especially. I mean, so I don't know. We'd have to really dig into the historical aspect of it, but along with the saga saying that this family took off and hid all of its treasures and this area of the world was destroyed by Catholics, does in a way fit with the historical narrative. Doesn't mean heathens and pagans are the good guys. I don't think any of these people are the good guys, because I tend to say the society wants you to lean on one wall or the other because it's easy to do that. But the problem is we're supposed to be finding our own invisible balance beam, that there's good ideas on both sides of this divide and conquer shit that's been put in our faces, if that makes sense.
The problem I have with that is I think if you run the Catholic timeline, I don't think it matches up with anything I've heard with the Bach saga. I mean, the Catholics were pretty good at recording their timeline and all the popes and all the writings and all the bishops and all the phony baloney bullshit that they were doing. And you can match that right up to the Bach saga. And it doesn't even.
Are we talking
close.
about the invasion of Finland and stuff like that? The dates are off. I noticed that as well. I did
considerably. So, and then you have all this different, I was just talking to my buddy Al Borealis, who runs Forum Borealis, and lives, good guy, and he lives way up in far Norway, and he was chatting with somebody about the Norse mythology and the Norse religion, culture, and stuff like that, and he was kind of laying a bunch of stuff because he's really studied it. It's kind of second nature to him, but he was kind of like, okay, you don't get it. It's like, number one, there is nothing left in Norway because, as you said, there's this kind of cleansing. But it's not just Catholic. It's different kind of things, and then some of them go over to Ireland and Scotland, but Iceland is most preserved of that kind of thing. So once you start really breaking that down with scholars, I don't think the Bach saga has some huge holes in it that to me are irrecoverable, that you just can't apply. When the scholarship starts pulling it apart, you can't start plugging the holes with just,
anecdote, perhaps.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Or just, I still like it, because it doesn't ring true, but isn't, because, and this is really, this conversation we're having right now is what's kind of really motivating me, pushing me in terms of us as a community, as truth seekers, I still think we've lost our way in so many ways, our way and have fallen into, kind of flat earth science, that's okay. Hey, everyone has an opinion, I've been on a guy's show where I'm like, look, it's bullshit, right? You don't really believe in flat earth. I've been on multiple shows where it's like, okay, you want to keep the options open. Number one, why do you want to keep the options open? And it goes back to the first thing I was saying, Andy, like, I do not want to piss you off so bad that like, you're like, fuck that Alex Tsakiris, dude. You know what? Seriously. But because here are the two kind of, like you were saying, walls that we're leaning on. One is when your Uncle Jerry comes to Thanksgiving, you've learned, man, you just go, you talk about the weather, or you talk about fishing, or, you just don't talk about this stuff with Uncle
Right.
Jim. It's going nowhere.
It's just going to ruin your night too. You didn't get any information into any brains that were going to hear it the right way.
So
Enjoy
that's
yourself.
That's on one level. And on the other level is, if we really were like in the real world, like longtime friends for the longest time, and had hung out and had done things, and I could totally trust you and you could totally trust me. And then we could have this kind of conversation, kind of Massachusetts style, where we're just throwing down and going, come on, bro, that's a bunch of bullshit. You know that.
Right,
and you go,
right.
yeah, well, you got your shit too, this and that. And then at the end, we could just, like, okay, get on with it,
Right.
But those are the two extremes, I think. I definitely want to be on the second one, but I understand the practical part of, talking to somebody we've never met before. How do you get there? And or worse yet, we're kind of letting our guard down. As you said, worse yet, you schedule an interview with someone, they've written a book or they have a presence, they're coming on your show. They do not want to hear, Andy ripping them apart. It just
doesn't work that way. No.
Right.
And it's also like, I said this on Twitter the other day about the saga, because again, I don't hold it to be true. I am very much like you, where I like to be open. I like to leave some wiggle room here to just pull out pieces of everybody's story and see where they went wrong or where some truth might lie or something like that. But I said the other day about the saga, like I want to have some like really intense researchers on that I really respect and be able to be like, hey, sorry, I don't want to talk about anything you're working on right now. Can I use your brain for 2 hours? And it's like, you can't really do that with someone you've never met, maybe after like 5 appearances or something, like, hey, can you help me out, man? Can you take a look at this for me? But even then it's hard because everybody's very busy and everybody's in their own silos kind of, and it's good to get out of the silo every once in a while, but we always kind of cycle back in every once in a while.
Well, there's a reason why we're in the silo, and sometimes it's a good reason. I mean, the reason why we're in some of the silos we're in terms of spirituality and in terms of extended consciousness and what that means, is because we think there are some truths there that really kind of drive us forward in our life. You know what I mean? And people who are shut down from that or in a different silo, you kind of want to knock on their little glass window and go, come on out. There's this whole other thing, because you will die and you will face whether or not there is anything after that, and what that is and what that means and what that could have meant in terms of how you live your life.
Yeah, I like the way you put that. Total regret or total jubilation, perhaps, one or the other. That ending circumstance that I go down that pathway a lot. Well, an interesting way to bridge from this Bach saga little tangent we went down into what we were really going to kind of get into was the reason that what resonates with me most about that saga is just the language, because of a psychedelic experience I had a long time ago that I came out of, and everybody, even my friends tripping with me, thought I was completely crazy. And then I just forgot about it after a while. But this saga reinvigorated the memory of coming out of an experience going, there's a hidden language inside of every modern language. There's some sort of phonetic connection that tells a sacred story that exists inside every one of us. And then I found Joseph Campbell and The Hero with 1,000 Faces. And I was like, this is someone else's puzzle piece talking about the same thing. Like, holy crap, there's this story that exists inside of it was just, that's what resonated with me. So not that a lot of the factoids about saga necessarily have to be true, but that something there resonates with my spirit in some way, perhaps.
Yeah, although I tell you, man, I would encourage you to kind of not tail off at the end there, because I don't think it's necessarily about your spirit there. I think what you're saying is it connects to an experiential truth that you had in this extended realm. So, that's been my kind of mission, and it's it's like a personal mission of discovery. Like, so the first thing is, does consciousness exist? Yeah, because you gotta, is that little voice inside your head, is that real? And like, I always point this out to people because I started this a long time ago, and the most popular, it still is the predominant paradigm in science, is that no, that is an illusion. That is not real. That is an epiphenomena. Your brain is just this ball of jelly up there, and it does this thing, and you think that story is real, but it's not. That has been falsified scientifically, and we talked 40 hours on that. Yeah. But the next point that gets us to your thing is that, one, you got to be firmly established in the science of that and understand that all these people who were led to believe we should respect and are smart, and Neil deGrasse Tyson and all the ilk Dawkins and Daniel Dennett, that they are completely wrong in a way that can be proven, demonstrated scientifically and philosophically. So that's like a paradigm shift. Like this is back to our kind of silo thing. That's why we're in a silo, because if you pull somebody in off the street, you go, yeah, that guy is full of shit here, and I'll show you. And you go, no, he's not. No, he couldn't, so you can't even go there. And I'm not even getting up to the part, because what you're talking about is a psychedelic experience, right? Mm-hmm. So now we're saying, not only is there this consciousness, not only is that story, that voice inside your head, not only is that real, but the voice can be outside your head, and that can be real. There is some kind of extended consciousness that we always knew when we're talking about angels and demons, or for Christian or whatever. We always knew there's this extended consciousness, but we weren't allowed to talk about it. And part of the way they muzzled us is because they denied even consciousness. They even said even the voice inside your head isn't real. Yeah. And now you're going, whoa, Andy, you're telling me that you had some experience outside of your body, and that's real, and that's an experience. Oh, Andy, you are so stupid.
Right.
So that's where I was poking you a little bit in terms of tailing off and saying, well, maybe it resonated me in it. No, man, you had maybe let's consider the opposite. Andy had a direct experience of knowing some super advanced knowledge that is out there in some other realm. And you pulled that knowledge back. And then that knowledge resonated with something else that you came across. Whether that is literally true or not in terms of the Bach saga is another question, but that's how you get what I'm saying. You get the
yes, it doesn't have to even match up directly. It just it relates. It directly relates. It's almost like a reflection in the external world from an internal experience. And honestly, you hit on a great point there, because I've heard many people, and I resonate with this, that when they have psychedelic experiences or near-death experiences, it almost feels like they're given this internal map or this internal puzzle, and they want to find all the pieces out here that match up with that internal puzzle. And it seems to be available. It seems to work, like putting the solution first and then finding the parts that get there. It's incredible, but again, that can lead to, bad thinking too, because you can get hung up on a thought and want to prove it more than it should be proven.
Absolutely. Great point. I love the ping pong back and forth.
It's got to be both, man. Unfortunately, it has to be both. It's those two leaning sides, right?
Exactly. And, so here's another, ping pong paradigm flip. Is that extended consciousness realm more real, whatever that means, real, than this realm, right? Because immediately you're nodding your head because you're like, yeah, that's what we keep hearing, isn't it? You talk to anyone who's had a near-death experience, overwhelmingly, like 90%, off the charts. This is real. This is home. You're living the illusion. Psychedelics. You're living the illusion. That was real. Out-of-body experience. All sorts of different experiences. E.T., what does that mean when people have that experience? They go, okay, this is... So think about that in terms of, so you have this extended consciousness experience like you did. It's profound and it's true in a way that you just knew it in your, you can't say in your bones because you're out of your body. You knew it, you know, at a soul level. And now you're coming back and now you're trying to rationalize it. Just like you said, you're trying to fit those pieces together in an inferior form.
Yes.
So
we're coming back from the, I like to say it's like the ecstatic experience of non-ego or something along those lines. And we're coming back and we're explaining it to everybody and sharing those experiences with our egoic, conscious, linear mind. So we have this feeling of non-linearity and all that. And then you come back in and the only way you can describe it is using this inferior, reduced form. I would say it's like a reduced form. I think illusion can be a dangerous term. I would wonder if you would agree with that because, you know, again, trying to find that middle path always. There's a way to get spiritual and then get carried off by certain people's ideas that kind of say the body is meaningless. It's just this spirit, this inner gnosis that matters, where I go more into the alchemical explanation of things. Like, for instance, those people you mentioned in science, like Neil deGrasse Tyson, all these people that we used to kind of accept. I mean, I did blindly like 20 years ago, for sure. I loved all of those guys. It's like they're looking at a model of reality and going, yeah, see, clearly this is how it works. And it's like, dude, that's made out of Legos. That's not the real thing. Does that make sense to you? Does that resonate?
Yeah, that's great. And yeah.
I don't know where I was going with that, but it's just, it feels like we're kind of reduced here, but it's not that it's fake. It's not that it's an illusion. I think even the word Maya in Buddhism and Hinduism has been misappropriated to illusion when it really represents the appearance of what is real. So it's, you know,
let me quote from Andy in his answer to my survey question. Consciousness. Again, this is really, it's short, but it's really very profound. I don't blow too much smoke here. Everything is consciousness. And then what you added is the paradox somehow allows this experience. To me, that is exactly what you just said there.
Yeah, you know? Alchemical. It's like taking paradox. Two polar opposites and creating this third. What is this? Why are we here? What's happening right now? Do we hold on to it? What do we do? Poof. I don't know. And and not to cut you off, it's given me a lot of stress about afterlife, honestly. And I love symbolism and I love ancient religions and looking at all the comparisons and how they're different and how they're similar. But I often wonder, are they ever really talking about beyond conscious life? Are they talking about what's missing from our perception right now? That, you know what I mean? Heaven here. Because on psychedelics especially, I see my desk, I see my computer, but much like that psychedelic art that's just been around forever, there's like more layers to it and it's beautiful and there's majesties everywhere. But it's not that it's anything different than what I'm seeing. I'm just seeing all of it, if that adds up.
It does add up. It's just how you're going to add it up. So, and here's a pivot that I think is kind of really interesting. So you take the psychedelic experience and it has all sorts of baggage associated with it. And we all get that. So pivot to the near-death experience and let's see what that looks like compared to that. Because I think the parallels are just stunning. So people have near-death experiences. And as we know, the variety of these are just unexplainable, and their weirdness is unexplainable and in some ways would seem to be irresolvable in the same way that psychedelic experiences are. Oh, I saw this, man. I saw this. Well, I saw this, you know, and like, then we're going to try and resolve those at some physical level. Well, that means that there's 17 million layers to reality. You know, it's like when I hear that stuff, it's like, here's a guy I interviewed from a near-death experience. Love the guy, great guy. His name is David Ditchfield. Think about this. British guy. He's going to kiss his wife goodbye at the train. He leans forward. This is England, so it's like Massachusetts. It's always raining. It's always shitty weather. Except now, you probably got good weather now.
Sometimes it's humid as hell, yeah.
He leans forward. His coat gets caught in the doors, and he is along for the ride as the train takes off. He's thrown under the train. The train rolls him over. He dies. Common misconception about near-death experience, and not a good use of the term, because he is dead by any means that we're clinically talking about in terms of 50 or 100 years ago, before we could do this resuscitation of bring people back to death. He's dead.
Yes.
And he's dead for a while. In his experience, he meets Jesus, and he's very clear about the fact that he meets Jesus. He develops these incredible abilities. Some people you hear develop psychic abilities, and he does a little bit of that after his near-death experience. But he also develops these incredible artistic abilities. I see you have a keyboard in the background.
Yes.
This guy had no musical background. All of a sudden, he's writing symphonies, and even had one performed, at his thing, drawing these art pieces, these huge, large-scale art pieces. I'm not an art expert, I can't tell you, but they look pretty incredible to me. I couldn't do them. But Jesus is a central part of his experience, So I'm talking to him, I'm saying, David, I get it. A lot of people see Jesus. I got to tell you, if you look at it scientifically, statistically, not everybody sees Jesus. Small percentage of people see Jesus. What are we to make of that? All the other parts of their experience line up. Oneness, love, God, connection, all that lines up. But some of them see Buddha. Some of them just see light. Some of them see energy. What do you make of that? I'm pretty sure it's Jesus, and then I had this other kind of hypnotic regression, and the woman who was regressing me said, hey, you were there with Jesus. I was like, okay. I said, how about this, David? I said, I've interviewed a lot of people with near-death experiences, and some of them have told me it was Jesus, but then when they thought about it more and as they lived their life, and some of them even had multiple near-death experiences, they said, yeah, it was Jesus, but there was something more. There was something more behind it. And then he paused for a second. He goes, yeah, I kind of get the sense that maybe there's something more. So switch over to our, hallucinogenic experience. So you're presented with all these kind of things that, like, if you're not experienced, become the focus of it, right. The lights and the colors and stuff like that.
Yeah, the illusions are still in here too. Yeah.
And some of them aren't illusions, because some of them are mixed in with like the deep knowing that you had, right?
Yes.
And same for David, And when he came back with Jesus, he came back with some good shit.
Yeah, damn right. Yeah.
But maybe there's more. So the trick there is back to what we're saying, not being stuck in the narrative, not being stuck in, I've now experienced everything. Let me come back and proselytize and convert people into everything.
I love where we're going with this, because it brought me to the thought of how, it's the inner to the outer, the micro to the macro, how we're describing an inner experience, but we're also talking about society too. Because a lot of times when we're talking about conspiracy theories and what the elites do, the big bad capital T, they, whatever that means, it's always that, well, there's always truth mixed in with the lies. And it's like, well, why does that keep reflecting consciousness's behavior? When I had my psychedelic experiences, I found the conspirator, and it was me. It was my surface level self. It was my ego, whatever, discipline you want to pull from. It was that word. It was that part of myself that couldn't face traumas that I dealt with. So I created patterns and walls, whatever. But it seems like it's such a very conscious experience going on here in the world when you see that kind of as above, so below structure of everything. That almost, I call it fractal. I talk about fractal geometry a lot, because not only is that a fan favorite of the psychedelic visual stimulus that occurs, but along with those visual cool hallucinations comes a gnosis of a deep philosophy about reality and how everything seems to be fractal on some level, that behind that Jesus or Buddha, there is this thing that exists that is just self-similar on every level. And that's why people say, you know, God is everywhere, or God is within you, or you can find God anywhere. It's why Terence McKenna came back from a psychedelic trip saying, a song is a song. To us, that made no sense, and it didn't have any profound impact on me when he told it. Everybody laughs in the audience because they get it, that he's saying that literally the truth is within everything. It's just, it's fractal, and it could mean a million different things. I don't know, we kind of jumped around there, but
no, spot on. Here's the dilemma we face. The reality that you're probing so deeply that few people are willing to go, it has some borders and limits that we understand too. And I would suggest those are different than what people are immediately thinking, because here's where I was going to go with that.
Okay.
The truth mixed with the lie thing that you said. Hey, if I'm a they, and my job is fucking socially engineering people, and you want me on that wall, you need me on that wall, kind of thing, which is true too. You know, we do live under the red, white, and blue, and all the shit that we've done, we own that to a certain extent, and we own and have to acknowledge that people are doing mean, nasty, horribly evil stuff in our name.
Yes.
Those people have perfected techniques that mirror, and I'm not sure how, I want to jump over to a different way of talking about it. They mirror what you're talking about. They mirror misinformation, disinformation, mixing truth and lie. Bam, that's a recipe for what is most effective to get this group from A to B. I am reluctant to connect that to the deeper experience that you had. I understand that at some level it all has to be connected, but I'm reluctant to go there because I hear what you're saying on a spiritual level, which is fantastic. Because what I hear you saying is, as soon as I start pointing at someone else, I need to do the old thing and look about. What is that? How is that? If I'm able to see that mean, nasty, evil shit, that means it's in me. If I'm able to process that DMT, that means that my body is capable of processing. Otherwise, if it was a total foreign substance, nothing would happen, or something else would happen. So, but you get what I'm saying is, I want to draw a line there, and it's a soft line, but there's a distinction there that needs to be made between, you get what I'm saying?
I think I do. So let me try to rephrase under the perspective you're going with. So it's like, perhaps what I was experiencing and kind of, mirroring out to the elites or whatever with my own inner behavior is just simply the ego or something. It's the bad behavior that I have, which can naturally be compared to the macro of the bad behavior that is in collective society.
I was kind of saying something slightly different.
Okay.
It's not contradictory. It's just that as we're trying to navigate this world, this space, and particularly what we're trying to do, you and I, is we're trying to live in these two worlds. And I'm saying that I don't think right now I'm willing to say that my feet aren't planted in two worlds, because that's how it seems to me. And the deeper spiritual understandings you came to about truth and lie, I think are beautiful, but I think they are separate from, at least at this point, from my understanding of what that guy who's running these psyops, what he's doing. And so I just want to, for a minute, kind of remove the spiritual part of that and just look at the if I was charged with doing that job and I was like into it and wanted to do that job, this is how I do it. I'd mix information with false information. I'd have exaggerated information. I'd somehow find, like, when I see people take off on Flat Earth or Tartaria, I'd subtly kind of really promote that, because that's going to divide this group in a way that they don't even realize, because people are going to be forced to choose, is it good or bad? So there's all these techniques, plays in the playbook, part of the trade, that when we shift over and we're talking about that, I think we have to kind of say, okay, I'm turning my back on the spiritual, because I'm not assuming that these guys are working on that level. They're just doing their freaking job.
Okay. I like this. I like where we're going here, because, okay, so maybe it's more like what they're doing out there is simply influencing our personal consciousness to act in that way sometimes. Maybe that's why I'm making that connection. But at the same time, also, we kind of can go back to what we were saying before about how, just because we can relate everything outwards to the greater fractal reality of spirituality or something like that, doesn't mean that we don't have to go to work tomorrow. Doesn't mean we don't have to deal with this physical situation. That maybe when we take a big step back, it's this beautiful mosaic. But when you get up close, there's individual free will that's pushing and pulling and making their own decisions that impact everyone else and can really screw things up. Does that sound a little bit more on point?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And, it's partly because I come at this from a business background, in that, that was my focus for my life. It's like, hey, man, I want to make the dough, so I was computer science guy, and then I got an MBA, and then I started a tech company. And I was all in it because I had this spiritual side of me, and I was doing Yogananda classes and all that. But to me, money was clarity. I would never have known my own bullshit unless I could get to some point where I'm like, okay, got that, check. Now explore this other stuff. In the realm, the only way that I was able to be successful in business was by just doing the same thing that I do now, just learning shit, I had the educational stuff, but my real education came from books, from seminars, from YouTubes before there were YouTubes, and I was always, and I had them in my car, I was always listening 10 times over, and, all the classic kind of ones. And I still do to this day, because I love learning and I love staying kind of on top of my game. So where I was going to take that is, like, if you look at sales, training, for lack of a better term, sales, self-help, stuff like that, there is so much of that is pure fucking black magic, left hand path.
Yep.
Jordan Belfort, go read Jordan Belfort, Wolf of Wall Street. Go read his book on selling. It's one of the best books out there on selling. It is black magic. Now, you have to dive really deep into understanding what that means in terms of black magic, or you're going to go down and think Damien Eccles is kind of a cool guy, even though he raped and killed 3 little kids because he was following Aleister Crowley and thought that was magic. And so that's another, I threw out a little grenade there to see if anyone would
I like the
blow up on that. So, but I think it's kind of interesting juxtaposing Damien Eccles and Jordan Belfort. And then, here's a third guy I'll throw in. Gosh, I forget his name, but his book is Never Split the Difference.
I'm not
Fantastic book. And the guy who wrote it,
I want to get
FBI negotiator. Did you pull up his name?
Really? Let's see what I got here. I'm pulling up Amazon. It is by, what the hell? Never Split the Difference. Negotiating as if your life depended on it.
That's it.
Chris Voss. Is that
Chris Voss? There he is.
Interesting.
I love this guy. I hate this guy. I love this guy. I do not. This guy is black magic. This guy is the ultimate black magic. He is, but check this out. This is, I want you on that wall, I need you on that wall stuff. Voss is an FBI negotiator. He opens up that book with a story of being in Manhattan. Two guys have robbed a bank, taken a dozen people hostage, and are holding a gun to their head and saying, fucking get us a car, get us out of here, or we're going to kill these people, right? Now, his job is to use his black magic to negotiate out of this situation. Do we want him to use his left-hand path shit? We're like, yeah, man, those innocent people just showed up for work. They didn't deserve that. So do what you have to do, which we've told every soldier and how our country got to. Do what you have to do, Voss. But the point is, what is that? How do we understand that? How do we process that? And then how do we process Damien Eccles too?
That was awesome, man, because you kind of paint the picture that this left-hand, right-hand path is kind of built into a lot of the everyday actions, the constant human behavior we see everywhere. I wonder if it can be split right down the middle in that case. Like, we're all doing left-hand or right-hand path magic, probably both at times, without even knowing it, without having any background or education into magic, or even thinking it's all hooey. We're still doing it, It's crazy.
You got it. And, to add a little bit of, I guess, bones to that, so it doesn't sound totally abstract. If you read Voss's book, the first thing he says is that, one, everybody talks too much in these situations, negotiating situations or selling situations. They're parallel. Talk too much. Silence, right? So, that's not black magic. It's a technique. Now you apply it. The next, exactly. The next thing is empathetic questioning, right? So, but then he gets much deeper. So, making that person feel heard. We've all heard of this stuff. Once you get into it deeper and deeper, you at some point have to acknowledge he's trying to manipulate consciousness in order to get to his end game. In the same way that, advertising it. Go ahead.
Yes. Just that, for those out there that, are into a lot of the topics I talk about, but maybe not the magic side of it, this is a really important part, that manipulation is literally, you're always after some goal in the material world, whether it's affection from someone that you don't deserve because you're treating them horribly, whatever the situation, it's a material gain in this experience. So you're literally doing magic, whether you believe in it or not. You're literally taking something that exists in the consciousness and bringing it into this world. And we're doing that all the time. And it's so subtle that it's just ignored. It's not believed in. It's laughed at. And like I said to you in that random little rant I sent you, magic is always, lightning coming out of sticks and stuff like that. It's this parody, because that way no one really recognizes what's happening all the time.
Yeah. Although it's just more and more complicated, however you slice it and dice it. And that's why, so like my big thing a couple of years ago, I wrote this book, Why Evil Matters. And the really point of that book was, the first book I wrote was Why Science is Wrong About Almost Everything. It was a book about consciousness. It was a book about what we're talking about, Neil deGrasse Tyson. If you really fucking think that there is no story that's being told in your head, that voice isn't real, no one really believes that shit. So why do we allow science to kind of beat us over the head with neurology and all this stuff that presupposes, is built on that foundation, and they kind of know it doesn't work, but they're not willing to just scrap it for all these other reasons. Back to the evil thing. My point with Why Evil Matters was to really say, okay, consciousness is conspiratorial, that scientific materialism insists that that's just out the window. No one really believed that. But this extended consciousness realm now brings us to the real question we have in our life. How should I live my life? What is right action? Is there such a thing as right action? Hey, is there right or wrong? Hey, maybe, it's all relative kind of thing. And the way that I think what brings that into focus better than anything else is evil. And that's another one. It immediately triggers people to go, no, there's no such thing as evil. Evil is a social construct, and it's what you define, whatever you think it is, it is. And it's like, okay, let me tell you a story from the book. Another FBI guy. I'm really not an FBI guy. I mean, how do you do that FBI thing? Oh my God, with what's his name? J. Edgar Hoover. I mean, I don't want to get started, but anyone who says they're FBI, I'm like, J. Edgar Hoover, man, how are you processing that? But I digress. So I interview this guy. He's an undercover FBI agent. Difficult to become not difficult. It is difficult to become an undercover FBI agent, but it also takes a certain kind of person. Back, Andy, to what we're talking about in terms of, who is that kind of person who can spin that magic? Because that's magic too, right? You have to cloak yourself. You have to become that other character. And it's acting, and is that magic? But this is even at a different level, because this is life or death. This guy's working with drug dealers, arms dealers, gang members, all this stuff. His last gig, he's infiltrating NAMBLA. Which is South Park. It's funny, ha, ha, ha. He's in New York on one of their field trips, and they're in the old Toys R Us that used to be in Times Square, and they're on the railing looking down at this 20-foot big carousel Ferris wheel. And these men are looking at these little kids, and they're talking about what they want to do to these kids. And it's not just sexual. They want to inflict pain because it's a power and it's a control thing. And he said, man, Alex, if I wasn't undercover, I would have picked them fucking up and thrown them over that rail and watched their head splatter.
Yeah, as a father, the restraint you'd have to have. Oh my God.
As a father. So
well, maybe not even.
No, I get it. I get it as a father of four. And so, but here's the point. Is that evil?
Yeah, allowing that
for
some greater good, some abstract greater good.
Well, I wasn't even going there, Andy. I was going to the first part, because the people who are on the fence about evil, everyone I've talked to, they come right off the fence. They go, no, that's fucking evil. That's fucking evil. Somebody wants to do that to some No, yes. I know.
The stealing of innocence. Yes. The removal of innocence is I think for some reason we could explore that for hours and hours as a root problem in society and civilization and history and yada, yada.
But in a way, no, that's okay. In a way, it kind of rolls us back to the very beginning of this conversation. It's like everyone has an opinion. Everyone's voice matters. It's like, let me anchor you now, because I said evil and you said evil is a social construct. There's really no such thing as good and bad. Now I'm going to anchor you with that experience, and you're going to come off of that bullshit, agnostic, middle never hold stuff, and you're going to go, okay, I get it. Yes, that is evil. Everyone says that. And what they don't realize is as soon as you have anchored that and driven that stake in the ground, now you're playing in a different field. And it's the one that we've been talking about here. Like, so what does that really mean now that there is evil? And what if we connect that with what we said, that, hey, this extended consciousness realm, that seems real too. So is there evil there, and there's evil here, and there's good? And now I'm ready to talk. You know what I mean? Now I'm ready to talk.
Hell yeah, man. Yeah, this is a lot. This is a lot to unpack. So I would like to clarify, because I tend to generalize too much sometimes. I would like to rewrite what I said about everybody has their puzzle piece that matters. I would like to say that everyone that's in this line of questioning and everyone that's pursuing wisdom, and we may be off here and there. Maybe I'm talking about our community, perhaps, or even the listeners, people that are asking these questions and going against what society would like them to do. And they're taking that route of asking weird questions and finding, seeking. I would say that each one of us is doing that because of something inside that tells us we have to go against this grain. And I think that's the puzzle piece I'm talking about. So no, someone in my life that I, won't name, that doesn't like any of this stuff. Yeah, their puzzle piece, if they probably don't have one, or it's been disintegrated, or maybe they traded it for something, but yeah, I would like to clarify that and maybe scale it down a bit, that there's those among us that have this innate feeling that we need to search for something, I guess, and others that don't. I know that doesn't really necessarily respond to everything you said, but you said a lot there. But that's just to kick it off a little bit,
Well, I'd also tie it back to, and we said this before, I'm not against everyone has a puzzle piece, because on some level, from a spiritual perspective, like we were talking about, that's undeniable. I mean, everyone has a puzzle piece for their puzzle,
Sometimes it gets destroyed when they're children, or, but trauma, all that.
Or, there's all these analogies we could do, or it gets hidden and then their job is to rediscover it, and you could say all this, but I don't want to demean that or sound like I'm being, demeaning, because like the part that we connected with at the beginning is that the spiritual journey sounds trite, but it's ultimately, it's true. Everything we run across it. So right. I'm on this spiritual journey. You're on this spiritual journey. And the person who's clueless, Neil deGrasse Tyson is on a spiritual journey. And, that's one of the things that's one of my other kind of pet peeve, little pet projects right now, is rich spiritual lives. How does this world look like if we accept this kind of obvious fact, once you process it, is we're all living rich spiritual lives, right? So that guy who was looking at that kid, he's living a rich spiritual life.
That's
so his voice, the voice inside, he's got the same voices, not the same, but he has the voices, and he's wrestling with them, and Elon Musk is wrestling with them, and Bill Gates, and they're not just, and yeah, they're human, totally. But where I think we need to go with that is, they're leading rich spiritual lives. That implies this extended consciousness realm that, like, you tapped into with your experience. Like you already said this, so I'm just going to kind of bring it back to the surface. Sure. Is your understanding that extended realm that you were in is somehow gone, shut off from you now that you're back, or is it still connected to you in some way?
Oh yeah, I guess. Well, the way it felt to me was that it faded. Like it was like, okay, we're gonna go back into the shadows now, but it's always here. It's always around you. It's constant. It's like Terrence. I'll bring him up again because how you said you were always listening in the car. Man, I spent my entire 20s just doing my job and listening to endless lectures from people I wanted to hear about. And Terrence was one of them that I just happened to have like 15 hours of lectures. And he once said about how someone came in the room during the middle of a DMT trip, and it kind of sent his consciousness right back to normal everyday reality, kind of trying to address this friend that walked in. But the elves were still hanging from the curtains, and they were going, oh, it's like, and of course it's a reflection of how he felt was on their faces and everything. It's always there. It's always a part of us. And that's where my questioning has been a lot lately in regards to near-death experience and stuff like that. Because again, for some reason, unlike some of my friends that would take the same damn bag of mushrooms with me, I had this profound perspective given to me that directly relates to a lot of what I hear from a lot of the great people who have written about near-death experience and stuff. So maybe I just need to go back into those realms again and refresh myself. Maybe my ego will get slapped around like, you thought this was just inside your head again. How long have you been away from this place? Come on. Or maybe a refresher. This is why people meditate, right? Keep that state of mind more and more present in their lives. I've heard that before. Maybe it works.
Well, it's interesting what you're saying, because you're talking about the integration process, and then you're also talking about the fact that whether you integrate or not, you're integrated. You know what I mean? So it's like,
yes, isn't that such a common theme in near-death experience, where they say all these rules, all these spiritual, oh, you have to do this or you'll never escape the you just wake up. Like I've heard that so many times from people on my show, on your show. And it's like, man, that throws a wrench in. And it really does. It speaks to the question you had before, like, is there a right way to live or not? Because a lot of near-death experience would come back and say, relax, it's okay. Just experience this, which that has implications into good or evil, I would say. And on the other end, it's like, no, you have to, ascend to this level of consciousness before you die, or else you're screwed. Or it's a very dualistic, again, very divide and conquer kind of setup. And I'm in it, you're in it. We're all kind of in this, like, where is our invincible balancing beam on that issue, And my God.
Well said.
It's difficult to navigate. And, to bridge into something new that you and I kind of wanted to talk about, Tartaria and flat earth a little bit. And again, it's always the same conversation in some way. That cognitive dissonance, that divide and conquer line of, let's get them to, question one or the other. Round or flat, there's good reason to question NASA, the funding behind it. There's good reason to question the people that started it and all the establishment that surrounds it. And there's so much good reason to question NASA directly. But there's a lot of reason to hold on to certain things. I tend to say they don't like to create. And every religion has written that about the pieces of shit in society. They don't like to create. They lob onto what's already created by the creative. They wouldn't be able to come up with some fake universe. I don't think they would be able to come up with some amazing mathematical alignment with Earth and the planets and the this and that. They're not creative enough to come up with that. I don't think. I think, if anything, they have to skew or whatever as much as they can that already exists. And that's kind of an extreme opinion, but
I don't think it's extreme. It's almost like, so in this other discussion that we're going to kind of switch to, what I'm kind of advocating for is science.
Okay.
So
how dare you?
Well, and as you answered, with my favorite, that was my answer, but you picked my favorite answer is, what is science? And you said it's a method. It's not a position statement.
It's a stepping stone. It's a tool.
Yes. So we've been kind of conditioned, especially lately. I mean, the most kind of in your face, kind of grotesque example of it was with the pandemic, where they said, this is science, this is overwhelming, this should end any scientific debate. I actually did a show on the phony mask science, and a guy from Yale University who was part of the study actually was quoted as saying that in the Washington Post. This should end any scientific debate. This is nail in the coffin research. This is the antithesis of the scientific method.
Yes.
Who says this should end scientific debate? Your spider senses should immediately be going off, but I digress. So when I kind of started Skeptiko eons ago, I was drawn to the guys who were doing science, like the parapsychology people, because I was interested in this question of consciousness. And the parapsychology people are the people who are doing like the ESP experiments, Yep. I'm like, okay, is there anything to that? That would really kind of answer this question in a way. So I got into that, and I knew science kind of, but I didn't, I had to really sharpen my skills. I had to understand how you put together a good experiment, what good controls will look like, what fake science looks like, even the stuff that we're inundated with all the time. Mm-hmm. It's an approach, it's a discipline that gives us a different perspective. And it's much more of also what I'm kind of comfortable with from a business standpoint. From a business standpoint, you know what? You make the fucking sale and you cash the check, or you do not. There is no in between.
Well
it's
put.
Did you fucking get paid? That is the answer. So science in some ways is the same. If you got a null result, like I don't know. I thought I was testing for that. It didn't come out. Like, okay, great. You got to throw that in the scrap heap. It's try again. You know, you can try again. But no, that's, you know, so did you control all the variables? Did you get a statistically significant result? So, and I'm not saying that always directly applies to the stuff we're talking about, but I think that method that we're talking about, the scientific method, has to be applied here. So NASA, all that stuff, got it, understand, agree, you know, why haven't we gone back for the belt, you know, all that. Yeah. That, as a scientist, that is noise that I want to get out of the signal. The signal is satellites. The signal is Sputnik, 1955. So you're telling me that but I'm not even going to say you're telling me, because then that gets into the whole anecdotal kind of thing. Satellites, go listen to, you know, Eddie Bravo and his other guys. I love Eddie Bravo. It's fantastic. Jiu-jitsu, genius in so many ways, right? But I don't know if he really believes this shit or what, but it's like satellites are held up by helium. It's like, this is like, or Elon Musk. Again, I'm not a big Elon Musk guy. Hey, how you know, when he said to Flat Earth, he goes, how come there isn't any Flat Mars Society? You know, he says, because we look out and we see Mars, we see it's around. Oh, well, yeah, it doesn't pass any kind of scientific, reasonable, I should look at it for more than 30 seconds. And what our community has done is kind of elevated this openness to kind of non-conforming ideas. We've opened that lens so far that we've lost the ability to discern. And I think the way to return to that discernment is through the scientific method. And it's brutal, but it's the way to really kind of discern and cut through shit.
And you touched on a really good point that in recent years we've been made to, or just willingly have learned to distrust science. And I always use throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I sound like a broken record, but that's what a lot of people do. A lot of times with science is like, it's all like, what else are they lying about? And I do that too. Often I get that. And I do it with history and I do it with technology, a lot of different subjects. But again, I go back to that thing where I don't think they're that creative, one. But also for me with the flat earth particularly, it's like I really hold dear to that as above, so below principle. And I know that part of my community even thinks that sentence is some satanic thing. And that's a problem too. But sticking with this, the as above, so below, you look at the subconscious realm, you look at brains compared to galaxies, and you look at all that self-similar behavior throughout everything. And it's beautiful. It makes up this beautiful existence that we're a part of. But flat earth will throw out not only space, but also the subatomic world. Oh, electron microscopes, that's all fake. That's all just silly stuff that they're throwing in our faces. And I'm like, come on. These levels of reality that exist within us as fractal, as just, I mean, that's kind of a weird way to say it, but you can see this self-similar pattern, at least I did, even inside myself, with behaviors and situations in my life from the past repeating themselves in bigger and better ways or worse ways, depending on what I was in control of. Negative or positive doesn't matter, but things echo outwards through our lives on every level. This as above, so below is such an important thing to me, at least, and to others, that's where I fall with the flat earth, because I can get behind stuff that I don't understand scientifically and go, oh, maybe. I don't know what a scientist would say to that. You know, I don't know if the pilot's just lying because you have a camera in his face. He's like, oh, yep, flat, totally. Yep, we all know it up here. Maybe he's trolling you. I don't know. I'm not going there, but I can go with what I feel inside. And it's that flowing self-similarity that happens in reality. But I don't know. What would you say to that?
I'd say a bunch of different points. No,
I'm all over the place, Alex.
No, because it's good stuff. So I'm making notes here because I want to kind of respond. I think like one of the things that's kind of difficult for all of us in this community is we understand the value of this conspiratorial, paranoid paradigm that we're in, and we're like, fucking A right. That is right, because they are lying to us, and it's provable over and over and over again.
Right.
And that is important to hold on to. And I think that, you know, that's part of the rub here, right? Is because now you're really, it's back to this two worlds, like a foot in both worlds, you know? And like now we have another two worlds, you know. One world is the conspiracy world. It's like, think conspiracy first, right?
Right.
We
Question
get that
first, right? Yeah,
exactly. And they even I go beyond question. Think conspiracy. Think someone's getting over on
you.
Exactly. I don't want to say that. Yeah, look at
it's
that.
built
first.
into society. Come on.
Exactly. It's built in. So I think that conspiratorial perspective is kind of essential. The other foot, though, is I need discernment, and I need rapid discernment. Flat Earth doesn't deserve more than 30 seconds of my time. And when it takes more than 30 seconds of my time to kind of understand that, then the question becomes back to the conspiratorial part. Why is that being perpetuated? What might I look at in terms of why that exists? Why I've been doing this show for 15 years. I've never had more people contact me like, oh, you should do a debate on flat Earth. Something out there in the ethers is trying to get this bubbled up to the top, because it just throws shit on our whole community, that there are people out there that actually believe in flat Earth. When you talk to any normies, and most people in our lives are normies, if you mention flat Earth, it is done. It is a done kind of thing. So, and it should be, because it doesn't deserve serious scientific thought. It just doesn't make any sense in any way that you can scientifically kind of prove. And don't even go there. So, and then number two, I guess, is I think it's important. This is my kind of personal hobby horse, but to plant the flag and not keep all doors open. Well, you know, I don't know. It could be, you know, maybe there's a chance. I don't know. No, plant the fucking flag and say, no, it's ridiculous bullshit. But I get it. I get it in the realm of the conspiratorial realm. But yeah, that one doesn't pass that test. Mm-hmm. And then the last one I want to throw in, which is kind of unrelated to that, but I want to get it out there and maybe it'll spark a more discussion. I also like the as below, so above, because, which is implied in what you're saying, as above, so below. But where as below, so above gets us is, as we were talking about, like, you don't think there's evil? Shit, just look down here. You don't have to contemplate demons and all the rest of that shit. Just look here.
Yes.
Oh, might that also be reflected? Of course, because the two are synonymous. But anyway, so
that's a really good point. I like
on the
that.
table, back to you.
Well, you know, okay, so this brings me to a very weird kind of point. It may be hard to even get out, but, you know, there's a lot of gatekeeping in the spiritual community, of course, too. You know, I would point to, you know, a place like Gaia TV is really interesting for a lot of information. And then there's a lot of, they really want us to feel like we're all superheroes and we're going to be transcending into different forms of physicality. And it's convoluted, in my opinion. There's a lot of convolution. Spirit guides versus archetypes versus feelings. What is it? Does it matter to discern, or is it just a perspective thing? You know, it's very convoluted in there, and it's hard to kind of dissect on. Again, how do we bring it back down to baseline? What should be thrown off the table and what should be kept on? You know, can we call it Satanists? Can we call it Luciferians? Because, of course, in physical reality, they have those silly groups. But then do we take it to that next level where it's demons and it's angels? Or is it just that's a perspective of something that's just naturally occurring in this experience of duality? I mean, whether we can point to, you know, humans making the decision to have divide and conquer put into the society to fuck people up, or if it's literally the forces of the universe, like, you know, yin and yang describe it perfectly, and the opposite is seated in each side. You know, I said this on a couple podcasts now, and I like to sound like a broken record sometimes, I guess, but it's important to say that, like, it feels like anyone that gets really behind the curtain and gets to see what the evil that's going on, it's almost like, oh, it has to be done. Oh, or else it all falls apart, or something like that. This push and pull of these opposing forces, this back to alchemy, perhaps, that these two opposing forces kind of create this middle ground of even being able to hear to talk to each other. I don't know. That's kind of wild. It's a little psychedelic, but maybe I just like to throw things at you and see what you can do with it.
No, I like that. I'm still stuck in the multiple worlds thing that we have to
let's
operate.
clarify.
No. I'm not opposing what you're saying. I'm just saying, in parallel to that, I think the thing that trips us up, Andy, is we're always forced to, like you say, wake up and, oh shit, hit the alarm clock. I got to get my ass to work, you know, and this is the best route. This is the best way to go. And traffic is bad and the bridge is closed, all that shit. That's a different world, you know? And so we're always in these two different worlds, and we have a different set of tools that work in one world and in another world. And what we're bringing to the table is saying, in that world of hit the alarm clock, avoid the bridge traffic, you also got to worry about these fucking guys who are trying to jab you in the arm in order to, you know, that you never thought that was part of the alarm clock world. And I think it's dangerous to, it's not dangerous. That sounds like hyperbole bullshit. That doesn't necessarily mean the same thing in the spiritual world. Like, I don't want to start making that connection right off the bat and say,
right,
well, they're trying to jab you in the arm because spiritually there's a, like, I'm open maybe, but the first part I want to process is, yes, the bridge really is out just because they haven't done the fucking maintenance on it. That isn't a conspiracy. But the jab in the arm that they're trying to do to my kids at school without my consent, yes, that is a conspiracy. So I can navigate the whole thing, and then we can have a discussion about my trip. You know,
right. Yeah. Okay. I like that. And you know, I'm guilty of you know, desiring that integration. And I think, you know, now that you put it this way, it's a good thing to play with, because it's like, you can get lost in integration as well, perhaps, and maybe that's something that, you know, they would look forward to, just confusion by a simple suggestion. Right. And I've pondered why psychedelics were used for so long, because suggestion, I can see that. But man, if a certain percentage were having my psychedelic experience, none of that brainwashing bullshit was even real. And I would have been laughing at them. Well, maybe they just get shot in the head 3 times after that, you know. But, you know, I had a hard time understanding why.
I got to jump in there.
Yeah, go ahead.
I got to jump in there because like that to me is like a super, super interesting point on a bunch of different levels.
Oh, good.
So you go back and you look at the psychedelic experiments and you look at the MK Ultra thing. And one of the things that pops out to me, again, I don't know this for sure, but if I'm going to put on that rational in this world, avoid the bridge hat, I go back to your point, Andy, is like, they're not that fucking smart. So like they really thought, they didn't know. They were like, oh man, you know, we'll be able to mind control people. We'll be able to suggest things. They didn't, they really believed, just like, you know, people with brought up in certain kind of crazy religions like Scientology or Mormonism or Catholicism, then they have these beliefs. Say, throw a grenade out there, see if it goes off. But the point being, like when I interviewed the guy, I've done a ton of interviews on the MK Ultra people and the Stargate people, you know, the Stargate remote viewing spy people, because a lot of people don't remember that was an MK Ultra project. It was Sidney Gottlieb, who was the Mengele guy who ran MK Ultra. Listen to Russell Targ, listen to Hal Puthoff. They said Sidney came by. Sidney wanted us to give LSD to the remote viewers, see what it would do.
Thank you for bringing that
MK
up.
Ultra. So back to the psychedelics, one of the things that like, if you listen to Russell Targ and like Joe McMonagle, and I'm not going to go into who this is. Joe McMonagle is remote viewer 001 psychic spy extraordinaire. But he says, hey man, we made it through, you know, three presidential administrations. We made it past these conservative Christians, and then we made it past, you know, all the, so there is these other realities that these guys are facing that would support your point, is that they're not that smart, you know. Sidney Gottlieb, well, let's just give some LSD to the remote viewers and see what happens. I get the feeling rich spiritual, he's leading a rich spiritual life, because we all are, but I don't think he could be this kind of brain dead psychologist, psychiatrist who really believes in this kind of material brain. That is a possibility. And that does seem to me, that's the simplest explanation for it. And now what does that mean in terms of what you're saying? Is, of course, we've given the keys to the Ferrari, which is LSD. We've given it to these frickin' kindergartners like Sidney Gottlieb's like, oh, I don't know, it messes with your brain and it does something.
Yeah, so maybe, maybe just simply because I will say, I guess I answered my own question about why use psychedelics, you know, is that, you know, at a young age or an untrained mind is gonna, you know, be in a world of chaos after something like that. If you don't have some sort of person to kind of be like, well, to help guide you back in some cases, not a guru necessarily, but, you know, it took me a long time to reintegrate into reality because I didn't know, you know, my whole world had been thrown upside down when I started doing psychedelics. You know, I spent a lot of time reading dead people in bookstores because I didn't have a lot of people around me to bounce ideas off of. But yeah, I guess, you know, it could just be used in that way to cause the confusion they love to create, perhaps, you know?
Well, and I think we're saying the same thing, but it's like, it could be used that way because they really were dumb. You know, they really were dumb. And that there was probably a community in there that, because as soon as people start using this, and this is back to Terence McKenna, you know, it's like, hey man, when these mushrooms grow out of the dog or out of the cow pasture, there's no controlling what's going to happen, you know?
Right.
So like you said, you know, some people have the bag of mushrooms and they have one experience, the other, but you got a bunch of mushrooms growing out there in the field and people eating them. There's going to be some people that are going to wake up. And the same thing I think is true with Sidney Gottlieb. Just because he doesn't get it doesn't mean that some of those people didn't get it. So,
right. Okay. I like that, you know, where it's, again, it's that mixture of intent and mistake or unknowing.
yes.
You know, like Ken Kesey once said that LSD, to describe LSD, it's we opened up a door, or the government opened up a door. They saw something in it they didn't understand. They put people in that room to see what it was. Those people came out and wouldn't listen to anything the people putting them in the room said anymore. And they said, okay, let's close that door and close it up forever. So in a way that kind of speaks to that ignorance, that fear ignorance, that, okay, let's shut the friggin' door. I don't know what we just did to society, but then of course you can go into how the 60s and the psychedelic revolution was a way to discredit a real movement, you know? So that's a whole nother, you know, that's an intentional side of it, perhaps, you know?
Plus you can go into the pharmacological, archaeological work in Pompeii, you know, the city that was covered by, right? I think you know where I'm going.
Oh,
with
yeah,
this.
yes.
And they look in the medicine chest and, ooh, there's cocaine. There's cannabis. And there is, I forget, you probably know, you know, the name of the fungus that grows in the wheat.
Oh, like ergot in LSD?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So they find ergot, like all these things are preserved, right? So it's like, again, that's classic us to think, we opened the door, you know, this swish. Fuck, dude, we didn't open no door. Somebody was brushing their hands in the wheat field and brought it up to their face and something happened thousands of years ago, which is what Terence McKenna has said. It is undoubtedly true. And so anyways, I'll throw that on the table.
Man, we could go in a lot of places from here. We've been going for a while, and man, I would just love to have you back sometime to have more of these. This is great. I don't know where would you like to go from here? Because we've covered so much ground.
Well, you know what I'd like to do? I'd like to put this out on
Sure.
my channel too. This is
gladly.
great because this is such an interesting discussion. And then I think you and I ought to huddle and talk about doing maybe even like a mini series on this, because I think it's so critical to this, because there's a lot of different ways to slice it. I think that does lead down, the river. They kind of merge at some point, and we didn't quite get them to merge all the way.
Not yet.
And
but I think there's a potential there to do so. I would be totally open to that. I'm sure the audience would love that as well. So yeah. So for now, we'll wrap up. Any last words before we, have you plug your show and everything?
I think the last word really is, I'm just really excited about this because the grenades went off and it was just like I was hoping for at the beginning. Like no one ran, no one jumped out of the foxhole. You didn't jump out of the foxhole. It's like, no, that's what you think. You think that. Okay, great. Let's dive into it and hash it out.
Yeah.
Because at its core, I really, really like where you're coming from. So I want to go on that. I want to go on that journey with you because we all know, especially in our community, that's what keeps bringing us back to this community is these are the people we do want to go on the journey with, because there's a lot of other people in our life who are like, oh man, just put on the freaking ball game because I don't even want to.
Yeah. If you, it's like building a house. If you can't get the foundation with a relationship going, then all the other layers are just going to fall apart. So yeah, we're finding a lot of common ground in this community. I love being a part of it. And, when I took psychedelics and had those crazy feelings, I didn't have a community like this. So it's great that it's expanding. I'm so glad that I got to have you on and we got to know each other and further work ahead. I appreciate it. And I would love to do that. So without further ado, Alex, for anyone that doesn't know at this point in the game, please let them know where they can find you.
It's Skeptiko, and it's with a KO on the end, and you'll find it, and you'll like it or not like it, and that's the way it goes.
Damn right. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of The Deep Share with Alex Tsakiris, and go check out his books, check out all of his shows, and yeah, you will hear from us again. So until then,
absolutely.
Take
Fantastic,
it easy.
Man. Really enjoyed it.
Peace out.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Deep Share podcast. If you want to hear more, then hit that subscribe button. Follow me on all the social places. And remember, think for yourself, but don't always believe what you think. Till next time.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, that's hysteria. Enough, I get the point.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone.
What do we know? What do we know? If I know what we know, then I can tell you what we know, and if someone else knows, okay? I mean,